Well, good evening, gentlemen. Shh, don't say anything, Lawrence. Shh. Okay. Is Jim listening? I don't think he's listening. Jay's back. He's behind. He's backstage, so he's not even here. This is really cool. This is like a red moment. He used to do this to me all the time. Tony, how you doing tonight? Lloyd, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Go Jays, go! We have decided as a group that we were going to do a quick show, and we were going to do it all together with all four of us. We haven't done that in a while, so I want to say hello to my esteemed colleagues, Lawrence Gunther,
hey,
and Big Jim McLaughlin, and of course Jay Barnucz, who will be joining us shortly. He's just backstage, but. Some things, guys, as I said, we want to get everybody to the Blue Jay game, but we also want to talk
about... We're going to the game? How are you getting me there? Had to get your coat, start the
car. So what we thought we'd discuss is sort of a state of the union. It isn't, it's been a while since we've really talked about, the state of fishing here in Canada, how it looks, what it's going to look like going forward, some of the things that we'd like to see changed. For the better, for the worse, what have you. But as it stands, I would like to say that as a whole, fishing here in Canada is, I think it's healthy and vibrant, and I think it has the potential to grow. It's how we get there and how we grow it that is something that we want to talk about tonight. Jim, you have talked at great length in regards to how the fishing right now has never been better. There have been studies, one of which that I will share here from Oceanicana, that says that we have lost 50% of our wild fish biomass since 1970. And before we went live, what was so interesting about this is, if it had been like, say, 1980, I don't know if I would have batted an eye. But 1970, as Jay and I talked about, it was literally the worst the state of fish has ever been with the Great Lakes. I think Lake Erie was still dead at that time, so we didn't have really anything in some of the Great Lakes, including Lake Erie. But saltwater obviously is included in this. But what do you say to this, Jim? Like, you are one that has historically always said the fishing has never been better than it is right now, and then you see something like this.
Yeah, well, just like Lawrence mentioned too, that 50%, that includes all the codfish that were out there that we caught. We just wiped that out. All the pollution that we did and everything else, and that's only where they surveyed. And the only places that they survey, I'm sure, are the places that look like they're in trouble. I don't think they're going up to like they're not going up to Yellowknife and check out Great Slave. Oh, geez, there's 3 less pike this year. Let's have a panic, stuff like that. And it's just when I see the fish, just like we were talking just a little bit ago here about me talking to Jim Fleming and the number of muskies, and meant nothing to catch 10 or 15 muskies in a day with your clients in Lake St. Clair. Like, the place is loaded. Look when the Bassmaster Elite guys went there. The guys, they were talking to him in the morning at the side of the boat, and Mercer says to him, "Have you got enough of those in the bag, all rigged and ready to go?" So he just had to put it on the line and tie it. And he said something about, "I got bitten off 17 times yesterday." Wow. Now, is there a lot of pike in Lake St. Clair? I don't know.
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, is there? It could be pike or muskie.
Yeah.
But still, they're fish with teeth. There's lots of fish out there, I mean, and I mentioned about the stuffed fish on the wall. I mean, they used to be 3-pound, 12-ounce smallmouth bass. They used to be 4-pound, 12-ounce. And it was, wow, look, Uncle Bob caught that, Now, everybody and their cousin has a 6 or a 7-pounder on the wall.
Right. True enough.
And stuff like that. And things just, they go up and down, but 3/4 of our lakes, I bet you even more than 3/4, probably 80% of our lakes never get fished.
Oh, easily.
Maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a thing the other day, and it showed Canada's population on the map of Canada, and it did it by color. And there's a little swatch out on the west. Then there's nothing across. There's nothing in Winnipeg. It doesn't even show. It hardly registers. It looked like somebody dotted it with a pen right about the border. and then it goes into southern Ontario, over to Quebec, and a little bit off to the east, and that's it. And the rest of it's a green space. Like,
100%.
have you ever flown over, like,
Yeah,
right up north? When you fly up to, Tuck or wherever you go up there, you're flying for 2 hours in a plane, and you don't see anything that we've done. You don't even see garbage. Like, there's nothing.
Yeah, no, true enough. Jay, you obviously, you and I talked before we went live as well in regards, I mean, whether the biomass as a whole has dropped, the quality of fishing, as Jim has just mentioned, has certainly gone up.
Yeah, we were talking beforehand, and I think that overall the quality of fishing we have has gone up a lot. Now, what's funny is the quality of fishing has gone up, but the actual number of anglers out there has gone down. It's still going down. Yeah. And why that is, I have no idea, because we have the best fishing that we've had. But numbers tell us that we are in a decline. We still have a lot of anglers out there, but we are not gaining, other than probably a little bit of gain during COVID. We're still declining.
Yeah. And it's stated here in a DFO report that just to your point, we are spending just as much time on the water, but the number of anglers and the hours fished is declining. And what attributes to that? Like, what do you think that is?
I just think there's less and less people working or playing and working in the fishing world, in the fishing realm. There's just few of us. There's other things to do, and we're sort of losing touch with that resource, sort of on a societal level, and society is just not taking advantage of that. There's opportunities for that. I think we see that with, economy doesn't help, but typically when economies are bad, fishing usually picks up. That's been the trend long term, because fishing is something that's easy to get into. Like, fishing's what you make it. You don't have to go out and buy all the high-end gear. Of course, we love our toys, but you don't have to be that way. And so that's why fishing usually does well during economic downturns. But right now, it doesn't seem to be going that way. And I'm not sure why. Because I think this is the perfect time to get into it, especially with all the information available. Fishing's a real challenge for some people to get better at, but now it's not. Like, look, I live with one, man. I live with a kid that his fishing prowess is, like, the learning curve is incredible because of the information that's available to people now. Yeah. It's amazing. Jim, if we had this stuff available to us 30, 40 years ago, like, who knows what we'd be doing right now. But
well, you hear me quite often, Scotty, comment that I didn't have the luxury of going and pushing a button and trying to find out what I should be doing or why. I had to go to the lake and have days where I came off the lake ready to throw all my fishing stuff out of the boat into the lake, sink the boat, and go knock in stop signs. Because you didn't have anything, you didn't have it anywhere to learn. Right. And I know Rocky and I had a long talk about this a few years back now. One night we must have talked for about 2 hours, and we ended up both congratulating ourselves big time for how many people we had taught how to fish, things that we had learned about. Like, the biggest thing was the offshore smallmouth. You've heard me talk about that several times, how we found out about that. It was actually Rocky. And I was like 2 minutes behind him with the same thing, because it happened on the same lake on the same day. We're standing looking at the spots that we use to catch smallmouth. I look behind me about 100 yards, and the water's just tore up with smallmouth feeding. They don't live on this stuff. They live out in the middle of the lake. They do. A lot of them. And forward-facing sonar has proven this. Mm-hmm. That the fish, it sort of took a little bit away from the bit about fish being creatures of habit and structure. Yeah. Well, middle of the lake now is structure, apparently, to a smallmouth.
100%.
I've been out here, on Lake Ontario here, and you're on a plateau that's like a mile across, and all of a sudden you're going along and you go, whoa, what was that? And you go back and there's a whole bunch of fish, and there's 2 boulders on the bottom. They might be the size of a Volkswagen, but there's 2 boulders and a whole bunch of fish around it, but they're nowhere near the shore. And I mean, that's how tournament fishing started. Guys just beating the bank with spinnerbaits and jigs. That's what they did, Yeah. Dock fishing, mat fishing, it had to be the shoreline. And it's completely changed now. Eh? Like we know so much more. Like it. I see kids now, like these young kids, they're fishing tournaments. There was one out of Cornwall or something on the weekend there. cost of sunglasses, or I don't know what it was, some local thing. I don't know how many boats they had, but I don't think I recognized like two of the names on the list. And they're, like if you can buy equipment now, if you can buy forward facing sonar, you can be a tournament fisherman, and they have no problem with that. Before it used to be, if you could afford a flipping rod, 25-pound test big game and a half-ounce jig, you were a player.
Yeah,
it's no different.
We will certainly get to where the future of fishing is headed, and what's going to take us there, and some of the highlights that we'll take note of along the way. But for now, as I said, we're discussing sort of the state of the fishing here in Canada. We've talked about just the biomass as a whole, and then of course the numbers of anglers seem to be on the decline. One thing that is positive, I have to say, Lawrence, and it's something that you talk about at great length, of course, is water quality. And I was intrigued to see this posted. It's from the Conference Board of Canada. And based on a grade A, B, C, or D, Canada is in the top 4 with a grade A when it comes to water quality. Now, some would argue, and I'm sure you're going to say this, it's probably because we have a lot of untouched water out there.
Yeah, like 20% of the surface fresh water in the world is located in Canada. Like that's not the water that's underground in the aquifers, but all the water that's flowing and raining and collecting in our lakes and rivers and wetlands. And so we got a lot of water in this country. And like Jim pointed out, we don't touch most of it. It's pretty remote and it's pretty pristine. It's just amazing. But the Great Lakes, they were technically dead. And there was phosphates in the 60s, you saw those old documentaries of all the foam on the water, and it caused a lot of issues with the water quality. There was all sorts of chemicals and pollutions and mercury and PCBs and DDTs in the water. We know all about that. But the main thing, too, we had unchecked lamprey in the Great Lakes for 100 years, from the 1880s until the 1960s when they invented lampricide, and they finally managed to turn that around. Now, around that same time, they improved the septic systems and the sewage treatment plants around the Great Lakes and got that under control. And by, in the 1970s, it started coming back in a roar. So that statistic, Scotty, you're talking about, the 50% decline in biomass of Canadian fish. You got to look at the exclusive zone that goes up about 350 kilometers off the shore. That's our exclusive economic zone. So we're counting all the fish out in that area, and Oceania Canada, that's their focus, is on the saltwater mainly. So they're focused on the salmon and the commercial fishing. That's where they're always putting their energy in communicating that stuff. So it's not fair to lump recreational fisheries into that, for sure. You can't mix those two things together. The Great Lakes have never been they're as good now in terms of fishing as they have been in over 150 years, probably. I mean, all the Great Lakes are doing well. They've got sustainable fisheries, lake trout, salmon, bass, walleye, perch. There's, good things happening in all the Great Lakes. And then you look at all the other Great Lakes across Canada that are doing well. And some are struggling a bit, but for the most part, we're doing well. And the water quality is improving. Our watersheds are fairly healthy for the most part. We're looking after them. We have regulations. We're enforcing those regulations, not wonderfully, but it's happening. And, you can still, if you're a mining company, you can still get a permit to turn a lake into a giant, hole to dump all your mining waste into. But the lake has to be separate from all the other lakes, and it has to be contained, and it can't spread outside of that lake. And there's probably about 200 of those lakes across Canada that have those permits. Mm-hmm. But there's tens of thousands of lakes, right? Tens and tens of thousands of lakes where we don't allow that. So we're really lucky. We're really lucky that we have so much great water. And, we're going to be one of the last countries in the world that's going to have water quality issues. I mean, this summer we had a lot of drought, and there's still fire bans happening, but we have lakes. I mean, we have rivers, and they're all flowing and they're all full of water. Maybe a little bit lower this year, but we're not going to run out of water anytime soon.
No. And Jay, I know you spend an awful lot of time in the rivers, and it's almost your second home. when it comes to the water quality, obviously Pete's asking, why is it so different from the Great Lakes to, areas like where he is up in Sudbury and the north? It's obvious, and I'll let you speak to it because there's a bunch of reasons.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say which is the most polluted. Depends on what metric you're going to measure it by. Typically, Lake Erie is kind of being considered the most polluted, and some of that's because it's the shallowest. It has a lot of influences from agricultural runoff, industrial pollution. Lake Ontario has its own issues because it's at the bottom of the system, so shit flows downhill. Pardon my French, but so whereas further up in the system, like Lake Superior and Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, they're so large. There's less industry. There's less agriculture. So those systems are able to, because they're so large, like it literally can help dilute the pollution. If that's probably the easiest way to describe it. So they all have their share of issues, but for the most part, in terms of quality of the water, it's been improving since the 70s in all those places. You don't have to go back that far to find places like the Cuyahoga River and the Love Canal, where there was literally rivers were catching on fire because they were so polluted. We have really come out of those times. We still have our challenges, but I think also too with technology, we're able to readily identify those challenges now and actually help to deal with. And so if we can identify the issues, we can deal with those issues. And before, we had a tough time figuring out pinpointing those problems. But Pete, your point's well taken. Why is it more polluted? There's just simply more people, more commerce, more industry in Southern Ontario than up in the north. And be happy for what you got up there, because down here we do have more pollution, but it's not as bad as it used to be. That's my take.
Yeah, stop sending your pollution down here.
Yeah.
well, look at Sudbury, with the nickel mine up there, right? And all the sulfate that went into the air and the acid rain. Those lakes were absolutely nothing grew in those lakes, not fish, not weeds, nothing. They were just pure, clear H2O, very acidic. But that got that under control, and those lakes have bounced back. But now they all suffer from blue-green algae, right? All those lakes around Sudbury now have blue-green algae issues. So, that's just they're warming. These lakes are, I don't know, I've never been in those lakes, but I'm told it's a challenge, and that's happening with all the lakes across southern Canada. We're having blue-green algae challenges in all of them.
Yeah, true enough.
Something that's really cool when we're talking about this now. I remember as a kid once, they took us as a group and we went for a hike along the Rideau Canal. Now, this was before they had all the fancy cement paths and all the stuff. And we had fishing rods and lunch boxes and, there's all kinds of things. There was kids we're just little kids. And we got over by Dow's Lake and a bunch of the kids wanted to swim. And they wouldn't let us swim, but a bunch of the kids did get into the water. For once, I was one of the ones that got in, and they all had pink eye and ear infections the next day because the Rideau Canal was literally like a sewer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was horrible. Like, I mean, it had so much garbage, and it was just like, like you talk about it, you're in the middle of a big city. There's lots of stuff going in. This year, the NCC opened in Dow's Lake a big swimming platform with ladders and things spraying water for the kids to play, and they could swim in there. Nobody's been sick. The water, you can almost drink it.
You can eat the fish there now too. I was talking to Dr. Sean Landsman, and he studies the pike and the walleye on the Rideau Canal and Dow's Lake, and he says there's a healthy walleye population going on. There's muskie, there's pike, there's perch, there's bass.
They're all there.
They're all but he says they're edible. He would not hesitate eating them.
Interesting. Yeah. When we talk about biomass, and Jay, you're probably the best person to ask this. When we talk about biomass, there are some folks out there, and maybe you're one of them, that would suggest that, regardless of forward-facing sonar and all of the technology that we have to increase our chances of hookup and finding fish and this, that, and everything else, that we may want to revisit our catch limits. People have said, we've talked about it here many times. Do we really need to keep as many perch as we're allowed out of, say, Lake Simcoe or anywhere else for that matter? Do we need to revisit some of these quotas? Do you think, Jay?
I think so. I think some of the catch limits that were set, they haven't changed for decades, right? And as we learn more about catch limits, And like I'll go to an example I love to talk about. 20 years ago, I was involved in one of the MNR zone councils, which was zone 17, which was that Kawartha Lakes zone. And we looked at steelhead numbers. So steelhead limits along Lake Ontario were set at 5, right? They were 5 fish, 5 steelhead, 5 rainbow trout. That's amazing. And we pushed for, and MNR also pushed, but a lot of the council agreed with the suggestion of bringing it down to 2 fish. And it's even been suggested, and some of the data suggests this, the research that's been done, is that even bringing it down to 1 fish is considered better. If you want to see an impact, you should bring it down to 1 fish, because 2 fish isn't doing much. Now, that's not, every system's different. You know, it's hard to draw numbers across the board. It would be nice to have unique limits based on each lake's productivity or each river's productivity. That's not practical across a broad place, especially like Ontario with so many different fisheries. But I think the general consensus is that our limits are just too high in most places. And I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of anglers, but you know, look at how aggressive we're seeing some states now around perch limits. And perch is a touchy one, because everyone loves a good feed of perch. I'm just as guilty as the next guy. And I think that in like Lake Erie, the perch numbers have really dropped off the last 20 years. And we have great monitoring data that supports that they've dropped off. And we aren't sure, 100% sure why. But I like to see that some of the state agencies have taken aggressive moves to control that. And, you know, and we could still keep lots of perch. We're just taking large quotas of perch and bringing it down. Now, there are users like commercial fisheries in Lake Erie that are taking a lot of perch too. So there are some conflicting uses here. Right. But I think, Scotty, that's seeing like in Lake Simcoe, where we went from 100 perch down to 50 perch for your daily possession and then 100 total possession, like that's still really high. And there was concern that would drive away a lot of that ice fishing industry. That hasn't been the case from what I've heard. If anything's hurting the ice fishing industry, it's climate change, not perch numbers, right? The perch numbers are still really high. It's just not enough ice to sustain the anglers. Exactly. That's hurting us, right?
I talked to those experts at the River Institute on the St. Lawrence River about the large perch disappearing out of the St. Lawrence. And they said, you know, is it overfishing? Have they selectively harvested all the big perch and now it's just small perch, so the genetically smaller variant left behind? That might have something to do with it. But they said their conclusion in the end is that there's less nutrients in the St. Lawrence River. And what do you need to grow a weed bed? You need nutrients. You have to fertilize the ground. You got to fertilize the bottom to grow the weeds. And if you don't have the fertilizer going in, you're not going to have the weed crop. And if you don't have the weed crops like it used to have, you're not going to have the perch. So they're thinking the St. Lawrence River is returning to its sort of original status, pre-dam, hydro dams and locks and all that stuff. And back then, 100 years ago, there was way less weed beds and a lot more just moving water. And that's sort of what we experienced in the 80s and 90s with the big, huge perch populations. That was an anomaly. That wasn't reality. That was a reality for a number of years, but that's not a reality that existed ever before in history.
100%. Jeff Dix has a great comment. Very few people have a good reason to harvest 25 crappie with the size most people are keeping. That limit should be reduced to maybe 5, maybe 10. Great argument, Jeff. And great. I love this, Bill. Very apropos. How can you say on one hand fishing is better and then say limits are too high on the other? By the way, 100 perch is too much. It's a good point you bring up, Bill. I think what the panel would agree on is what Jim has always said. The biomass might not be the same as it was when it was at its height, but the quality of fishing has certainly improved. And with that comes a need to be selective in our harvest. And if we are targeting those big perch, those big walleye, we don't need to keep as many of them. And hence the reason we have slot limits and everything else when it comes to managing fish consumption. But at the end of the day, the quality has certainly gone up, but do we also need to keep the quantity to where it is and has been for so many years? I don't think we do. And again, Jay did a great job of explaining that. Jim, we had Matt Koparash on the Power Hour last Wednesday, and he very eloquently pointed you out as a real reason to get into fishing.
Oh, really? That's cool. I like to hear things like that. Yeah,
yeah. And
True.
He said it was.
That's the reason I got into fishing too.
It was the connection that he made with you, reading, and seeing you on all the TV shows, and I really like to think we talked about, technology and social media and YouTube and all that, making fishing a little bit easier for folks to get into and understand. But are we really connecting with that youth? Because there's a stat here that suggests that we've gone from the average age of an angler that possesses a fishing license, 41 and a half, I believe, in 1980. And then 2005 was the latest, where it had jumped up to 51 years was the average age. With that being said, what do we need to improve on when it gets to getting kids into fishing?
Oh, beam phones off the earth. It's the only reason. It's the only reason why kids aren't going fishing.
Yeah.
They got something else to do. I can't think of another big legitimate reason that the kids would go. And yet the average person today that has taken the time to learn, you still have a lot of people they're slightly older that are stuck in the old world, where if you caught a fish, come hell or high water, that fish is going and you're getting a picture of the sink. They're going to kill a fish. They caught it. It's their right to do. I had a lady post one on a website here. Well, I didn't have. I just saw the post, and she's standing on her dock. It was a couple of weekends ago. It was up north of 7 here somewhere, and she's holding up a walleye. And if it ain't 32 inches, it ain't a walleye. It's a giant. It's like 12, 13 pounds out of a lake, not Quinny or something. So it's an absolute giant. And her comment was, we haven't been able to catch a walleye in the lake ever since we've had the cottage here. I'm so happy we caught one like this. And I wanted to go on and say, well, that's the ones that would be making the walleyes for you to catch. But what about the Great Canadian Fish Fry?
Yeah.
It's one of those things you're in it, but once again, education, not about keeping and it was dark, it was gold. I'm not going to mention the lake, but it was, they'd know who it was.
Yeah.
But the fish was beautiful. I would love to have caught that fish, but I wouldn't have been putting it in 2 pounds of tartar sauce. It would have been, back in the lake, as I do, with 99% of the fish.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing. But when you see things like that, there's there's still that old class of people I talk about, and I say it. I'm in my 70s, but I'm not doing that because I've learned that you shouldn't do it. Like I have my classic story about the crappies there 3 or 4 years ago when I was going to keep them to eat. I caught them out the back here one night, and I had, I don't know, it was 5 or 6. I thought plenty for me and Tammy to have a nice meal.
Yeah.
I was leaving, and I'm looking at them in the bucket, and they're all swimming around in there, and oh God! And I just took the bucket and put it down, and I have no problem cleaning the fish. That's the least of my worries. I have, in fact, I think I saw it today when I dumped some stuff in here. There is the best fillet knife in the world.
Wow.
That's the best fillet knife in the world. I don't know how much this cost, but years ago when they roasted me at the spring fishing show, and they had Gord Pizer, Dave Mercer, Rocky, Azumi, I forget who else, but like they did a roast, and it was so funny. Mercer slamming me. Everybody's trying to have a poke at me, and Rocky gets up and says, I don't know, I can't say anything bad about him. It was so funny. It was so funny. But no, it's just one of those things that it's like when I see these, I see guides across out of Clayton here on the American side, and God bless them, it's their living, it's what they do, they've done it for years. But you see them coming out, they do two runs a day in the season, and they've got coolers full of 4-pound smallmouths. And the smallmouth fishery still continues on,
Yeah.
But because we've always been taking fish. I don't think it made a difference if they were 2.5 pounds or whether they were 4.5. The fish still come out of the water and they're gone. So they're not going to make any more. But some of these things, and you see them, they fish with live bait, and and it's not just the American side, it's on the Canadian side too, or whatever. You see them, and they fish with live bait, and they've got like 6 pounds smallmouth, and they're filleting them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just some people. It's what it is. It's the once a year they go for a fish, and I really can't bicker with that.
Yeah.
I think what we see Bill's comment here about even like perch. So he believes that perch are a weird example because their numbers they need to keep their numbers in check, which is in some cases this kind of reminds me of the point about bass. If you listen to Gene Gilliland from Bass, he'll tell you that in many places in the U.S. we've gone to so much catch and release fishing that we're not keeping enough bass to help regulate the population. And this gets back to, I don't want to ask for any royalties from in-fishermen, but maybe Scotty, you need to start asking for royalties on this show because all we do is mention those guys.
Yeah.
They were cutting edge. And let's talk about selective harvest. When I had selective harvest, I still have a sticker somewhere around here.
The triangle
with the little fish and the arrows. It looked like the recycling logo.
Yeah.
Right, dude. I'm telling you, I was probably Trevor's age when I got my first selective harvest sticker. So that was 30 plus years ago. And that still holds today. Now, selective harvest is tricky because different fish in different lakes have different needs and different, you can't compare yellow perch in the quarry down the road here to what's going on in Lake Erie. Even though the limits are exactly the same. If I wanted to go to that quarry and keep 50 perch, I can. I could also keep 50 perch in Lake Erie, right? So do I want to do that? Probably not. Well, they're all black spot and wormy in the quarry. But let's say I didn't care. I could do that. And it's hard to manage fisheries. And I think that's where the selective harvest comes in, where in-fisherman was saying, hey, guys, look, you got your limits. These are the limits. These are the slot limits. These are the species you can catch. You be smart about it. So, Jim, the walleye story you're telling, great example of selective harvest. Maybe we shouldn't have to keep that fish. I can remember doing creel survey on Rice Lake. So for those that don't know, that's when you're doing angler surveys, right? And this is one of my first jobs. I was in college, and one of my zones was the Otonabee River. So I would take a boat from the mouth of the Otonabee on Rice, and I'd boat up to Loch 19 and back. And for 8 hours, I'd interview anglers on the Otonabee. I remember one night, these guys were catching so many big largemouth on live frogs. This was 1995. And I remember pulling up they were in an old Thundercraft with a bow rider. Okay. Mm-hmm. They were anchored up in this cove off the Otonabee, and they were catching huge largemouth on frogs. And of course, M&R had asked me to, once in a while measure some fish and take scale samples and stuff. Well, I wanted to weigh these ones, just my own personal interest. So I put on my M&R hat, and I'm like, I need to measure those fish, boys. And I pulled I pulled out the scale. And these were all 5 to 6 pound class largemouth. Wow. They each had 4. They had 2 strainers working, and they were all on. They had a bucket of live frogs. All of this was legal at the time, right? And should those guys be keeping? I've never seen so many big bass in one time in my life. And there was 2 limits they're working on. But hey, if they were practicing selective harvest, they could have let some of them go. I'm sure they caught smaller ones. But they didn't let them go, right? Yeah. So selective harvest is timeless. And I wish, man, we need to bring those stickers back, and people need to put them on their damn boats and on their kayaks and everywhere else. It's true, though.
It's so true. Mm-hmm. So true. Jay, before we let you go, Bill's asking about how do anglers combat the black spot?
You can't combat it. No, it's not harmful to eat. It's just actually a scar that's left. The worm itself is gone at that point, but it's a very, man, is it ever unappetizing? That's all it is, right? There's nothing wrong. You can eat it from what I've been told, but it's so unappetizing. Good Lord. I've seen, you guys are too, I have seen black spots so thick in a fish. I'm like, what is holding this rock bass together except for black? That's so how thick they are with it, right? So true. Yeah, Bill,
I got it covered.
Yeah. And it's all the way through the fish. I've cleaned fish that have some of it, and the black spots are like the cysts are all the way into the meat of the fillet. Like it is unbelievable, right? Yeah.
I remember one night we were at this camp.
Yeah.
Crunchy. We were at this camp and we got we caught a couple of walleyes at the end of the night. We were going to have them as an hors d'oeuvre in the beginning, so to speak. That was leading up to copious amounts of alcohol. But
yeah,
you're there, and I cleaned the fish because I'm good at it. And this was before the fancy knife. But I cleaned the fish, and one of the guys made the comment when I brought them out, because I just fried them in 2 big pieces. We had a deep fryer. There was 2 big pieces off each fish, so I got 4 pieces. Now these fish, this was a fly-in. Like this place, the fish had a lot of worms. You know the yellow worms? So I just cut them all out.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with eating them. If they're but I believe so, right, Jay?
You can eat them, but it's all choice. Yeah,
I'll pass. I don't mind them being cut out. I don't.
Yeah.
There used to be a worm there. I'm okay. There still is a worm there. I'm out. But and one of the guys referred to it. I still see him once in a while as my Swiss cheese walleyes. There's so many holes I cut, and you can see it. He got the fillet. There's about 10 holes. It was all around today. You know, I want to say something before I forget this, and I don't.
Yeah.
Say, you know, you mentioned about them talking, Jay, about we're not harvesting enough fish.
Yeah.
Like, well, the lakes maybe aren't supposed to have the fish harvested by us in huge numbers.
That's right.
I feel that way. You know, I'm not a bear. I'm not a fox or another fish.
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
Eating a fish, eh?
Yeah.
Gordon Pizer said something to me a long time ago when I was out there fishing with him and all the guys from the Inn Fishermen and the Linders and everything on Lake of the Woods. And he said one night we were sitting talking that the fish and the animals get along really, really good until we get involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a guy, he ran the Kenora District, Jay, for what, 20 years?
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Yep.
And it's all still there. There's still fish. There's still animals. It's everything there for, everybody comes on and says, oh, the M&R guys don't know what they're talking about. This, everything else. Well, they're the ones with the numbers after their name and the letters and have the degrees and the stuff. They're the guys I'm going to listen to, because they're just because Uncle Bob hasn't shot a moose for the last 7 years doesn't mean there's no moose in the woods. It means he just didn't have one that he got to shoot, Yeah. And I often liken that to a guy on Mississippi Lake here at one of the those neighborhood meetings that they had with the M&R a few years ago. And he talked about how every night at his cottage, he could ice fish in the wintertime and catch 3 or 4 walleyes off just in front of his dock. Wow. And he didn't catch them now.
Wow.
For that reason, he said there was no walleyes left in Mississippi Lake. And at the time, it was experiencing like an absolute boom. Like the thing was loaded. Yeah. You could go out and catch them at will. Like it was nuts, eh? But there's, the reason why you have to listen to the scientists. And after we were talking about the fishing behind here, and George sent me some graphs and things, and he was telling me that my lake behind the house here, I'm not sure if we mentioned this last week or not. My lake, when they did the netting, showed 11% of the lake, or 11% of what they got was largemouth bass. And he told me, when I was texting with him, he said that is like abnormally high. It's like monstrous. And that's part of the reason I live here, because you could go out here. I mean, I know how to fish seasonally. And there was times here in the end of September when I'd go out here and catch 40 or 50 largemouths in an afternoon. And they were all 3 pounds, 4 pounds, and targeting these fish on certain structures and weeds in the middle of the lake, not on the shore, and a whole bunch of factors in there. And you've seen it change. But at the same time, he's down here taking nets out in Dog Lake, which I can get to by water from here. Those surveys showed no bass, no smallmouth, no largemouth.
Wow.
It's loaded.
Wow.
I mean, loaded beyond, 25 pounds of smallmouth in a tournament there. You should win. And I mean, it's not a very big lake. You fire a gun at one end, you might hear it at the other end.
Yeah.
Like they're not huge lakes, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And well, look, last weekend, Scott, or 2 weekends ago when you were here and we went and met the guys from the Cambridge Club. I brought Scott Martin to the meeting. I never saw a person look so disappointed. That's not Scotty Martin.
I had a few girlfriends that had the same look of disappointment at times.
But I mean, even, those guys had never been there. They were all catching 13, 14, 15 pounds of fish.
Yeah.
And they had, 17, 18? And then we fish out here, catch basically dick.
Yeah.
And that's my premise for what happened with the poaching here.
True. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. The lake
Okay, let's start. We got 20 minutes left, and I really want to get your guys' take on where we go from here, where fishing is going to go. Lawrence, we'll start with you. Everything would suggest that numbers of licenses are starting to decline. The average age of an angler is going up. The average number of anglers and time on the water is starting to drop. Revenue obviously is going to take a hit with the price of living these days. That's not going to be coming down anytime soon. However, I did speak to a real estate agent that would suggest that house prices are going to drop dramatically in the next year, and that interest rates might be clawing back. So that is a good thing. But when it comes to fishing, what in your eyes, with all these declines and increases that we've talked about tonight, what do you see as the steering force in the future when it comes to fishing, and what do we need to change it if it's being steered into a bridge embankment?
People are moving more and more to urban centers, right? You see this in Ontario, small towns located in the middle of Ontario. A lot of them are just getting hollowed out. Young people are moving to the city to get an education, get a job. So, the smaller communities, the populations are dropping. It's getting concentrated in the bigger urban centers. And then any body of water that you can drive to and fish and get back that day, those are becoming highly pressured, like Mississippi Lake. It's 40 minutes from downtown Ottawa. So you got to think that if that's you, if you're that person, and you have a limit that the same person has who's living 4 hours from a city and, fishing a lake that receives very little pressure, you got to question yourself. Maybe these limits need to be reorganized a little bit based on population density. And maybe that has to be taken into consideration, and not just, how many fish are in the lake, because you unleash a whole bunch of people like Lake Simcoe in the wintertime, right? All the population coming out of Toronto and fishing that, it's like a city out there. So I think we have to learn that if you're fishing water that's highly pressured, and most of us are, then we need to start thinking how we fish and the tackle we're using and all of that around, making sure fish go back healthy, because we're going to be letting a lot more of them go and keeping a lot fewer, because we're not going to be having, this whole thing about slot limits and over and under. That's going to become the norm more and more, I think, and it needs to. And we need to get way more technical with how we harvest fish and how we catch and release fish. The regulations around that are going to have to be really, become nuanced, because we're all fishing in the same lakes. We're all fishing for the same fish, most of us. But then you go way up in the north and people are fishing with single barbless hooks because they're worried about the fish population up there too, and they're doing something about it. And you talk to fishing lodge operators in fly-in camps, and they're introducing their own policies about harvesting and making sure the big ones are released, and their guides are promoting that. So we're all getting smarter about that, but we've got more roads to make up on that. And we're going to have to lean on our scientists to figure this out, especially for these urban areas.
Good point. Great point. Jay, we'll go to you. And I have to say, for someone that has a young aspiring angler who I'm so proud of, and I get to see the young De Silva lad do his commentary as well. I think it's awesome. And obviously this is the future, and it speaks to the future of angling. But in terms of the guiding force, with things declining and concerning, biomasses and what have you that we've discussed tonight, we've talked about forward-facing sonar till we're all blue in the face. To Lawrence's point, fish handling is crucial. Is there anything else that you see as a factor that we need to maybe pay a little bit more attention to?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually, Scotty. You mentioned Trevor, but I also look at a lot of Trevor's peers, and especially young peers like Christian De Silva and others who are these young influencers can make influence and be very positive. And I think that there's I don't want to sound like too much like a jerk here, but you can have four of us bitch and moan about how things should be. And I think a lot of the topics we talk on this show are very valid and very important topics. But when you can get young people basically who can buy into it and they're on the same page as we are and they can influence their peers, that's pretty powerful stuff, man. Like I see how, and I'm not saying young people are influential, they are, but they're more readily listen to someone closer in their age. Does that make sense? And I think that there's opportunities for, and I just named 2 boys out of several, and young women too, that are they have such an opportunity here to make a difference.
Agreed.
And and whether that's through the CFN or through their own channels, I encourage them to keep it up. And if they need any help doing it, like I most days now, I'm holding the camera for Trevor and his friends because I enjoy them doing it. I don't need the one bitching and moaning. I think the message sounds better sometimes coming from them. And I think if in what Lawrence has talked about, like when we have these young people, if we want to get them more involved in the outdoors, and there's less and less small townness in Ontario. Even like if I drive around where I live, all these little hamlets used to have a general store, used to have a gas station. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's moving into all the towns are getting bigger, but all the little hamlets and little villages they're disappearing. Right. And I think that a lot of that is young people we're becoming much more urbanized, but we can still share our experiences as anglers with all those people through social media and get them outdoors. And I think that can be done really well with young people. Really, really well.
Great point, Jay. Great point.
Yeah,
Jim, I'll leave this as the sort of the last question for you, and then we'll just take a roundtable. But Jim, obviously, you've been on the planet longer than the 4 of us. You've been in fishing longer than the 4 of us.
Thank God, not put together.
He stopped himself.
Lawrence was thinking it.
I was waiting for him to say it.
Oh, Father Time.
With that being said, and you've gone through a lot of a passing of the baton, for lack of a better way of explaining it. I really sensed back in the 90s when I got involved in the fishing community that there was a hierarchy, that there was control. Fish and Wildlife Advisory Board was there and speaking on the behalf of anglers. Alpha H became popular. Muskies Canada. There were some groups out there that were sort of carrying the torch, and they were the leaders. They were the examples when it came to fishing, decisions that had to be made about fishing. These were the folks that they were relied on to guide us. I don't see that anymore. Certainly not as strong of a presence. Is it concerning to you? And if so, how do we change it?
Yeah, I don't see people coming that have done what I do to try to interest kids in fishing. Like, this year, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it though. The pond's going to be the 31st year. You may have to push me around in a wagon, Scotty. So get your legs in shape.
You got it, buddy.
I don't see anybody coming that did what I used to do. Like, I just was talking to Lee from Shimano this morning. So what do I do? I'm going to tight lines on Friday for a while. What's the first thing that I did? I went and filled up my bag with stuff for the kids. So it's sitting here for it. And I don't see other people doing things like that. We've looked back through my day books here and seen what I used to do. I used to put in like 135, 140 days a year. 30, I would give up every weekend of the year that I didn't have a paying gig. I was at a kids event. Some weekends I was at 3 and 4. I don't see anybody doing that. I can't run around on the shore like I used to with them now, but I make sure that I'm there. And something that I noticed on my Facebook, the other way it gives you, I guess in the analytics or whatever, I don't know exactly what you'd call it, but it gives you the breakdown of the age of the people that follow you. I have a like 19% on the lowest one, which is under 20 or something. So somehow I relate to young people. And I think I don't know what it is. Maybe because I show a genuine interest in them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them love fishing. You know, there's a classic example. Jeff Dix right there, the picture of his daughter down in the corner. That's the picture. This is the day she got her first big person drop shot rod, garage for me. You know, and things like that. I will never stop doing this. I will go out of my way to do this. And I'm sure I'll be dying in the hospital with the oxygen up my nose or wherever it is that they stick it. And I'll be trying to give a kid a lure. And it's what I am. And I don't see anybody like that. I see other guys that, you know, once or twice a year, they go out and they do things and it's off to them. But there's just, I think you're seeing a lot of the guys that were there in the beginning. They're getting older. They're going away, and it's going to change because there's not a lot coming. And I see a lot of the younger ones. I took that kid thing right in the beginning, and I see a lot of young kids coming. Like I'm just enthralled with Jay's young lad.
Yeah.
He just watch him. He's always doing something. He's on talking about, you know, something, whatever. And I just think it's great. And I never thought of the fact that you were saying that younger people, you know, key on something like that because he's their own age. And why? Because I'm a big kid. I'm never going to grow up.
Yeah.
I always had the kids around me. Like they're not scared of me. Like they stay just far enough away in case I fall and I don't land on them. Oh, good. You know?
Oh, well said. I have to mention too. There's a video out there. Christian is interviewing the Joey T's.
Yeah.
And what a
is that who that is? It's the young. I saw that. Yeah.
What a fabulous job that was.
So great job,
Gary.
Yes,
if you were listening,
good job, Christian. Good job, buddy.
Well done. That was really, really well done. We got a few minutes here, so why don't we do a roundtable? Jay, is there any last words that you want to mention or topics you want to bring up?
No, man, we finally got some rain, and everyone's been texting me all day about, oh, is it time to go? Do we got to hit the rivers? And I'm not going to say the fish haven't moved in a little bit, but
thank you, Joe.
Things are so dry. I think the rain we got last night, it's finally just like topping up like the land, the water table. Like things have been so dry, but we're supposed to get more rain this week and even next week. So for Southern Ontario anglers, I think we will see some fish move in. And I think it's just going to get better from here on in. So that's because I've been fielding text messages and DMs all day about rain because everyone got excited, which I'm excited too. So looking forward to catching. Although I got some crankbait largemouth fish and I got to get off my chest before winter, Jim. I got some good crankbait fishing I got to do in the next 2 weeks before the bass rods start.
You had me at crankbait and largemouth.
I know, buddy. I this fall crankbait bite. It's one of my favorites, and even if I only get to do it for a day or two, I'm doing it. So I'm looking forward to that soon.
Speaking about that, at this time of the year, I was bringing up some stuff here for hopefully getting out here for one last go, and to show you how many pike that there has been here. I was rigging up a rattle bait, and look what I got at the front of the rattle bait.
Oh yeah!
Wow!
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah! Nothing wrong with that.
That little single strand leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I start getting short of lures, there's a problem.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with one of those, buddy. Because crankbaits aren't getting any cheaper, and they're getting hard to find, dude.
And it's time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right on.
Jeff Dix will be happy. That's his little craw.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
But it's time for hair.
That's awesome. Lawrence, roundtable. We'll head to you. Any last comments? Any words of wisdom that you want to share with us?
I think the social media. We all say it's bad. It's got a lot of negative things about it. But the younger population now, whatever X gen, whatever they are, young people, they're trained on how to use social media and how to avoid the traps and the pitfalls. And they're doing their studies on it. That's where they get their information from. So I think, having young people that they can relate to and look up and watch, yeah, maybe they're not going to ever meet them, but they're definitely learning from them. And I think we've got to make sure that the people doing the teaching are getting some teaching as well, right? Because if they're just making it up, and if they're just talking about, hey, here's how to catch more fish, bigger fish, here's how to catch them faster, we also need to make sure that we're educating people. And I was just reading an article about a school in England that's adopted a angler's instruction program. So they're teaching angler and country, and how to be in the country, how to be in the outdoors, and how to fish, and all the arts that go along with fishing, and how to make sure you're good at fishing and you're doing it the right way. So I think we're going to need some more programs like that in the school system. Kids love fishing, and that's never going to change. It's being promoted in many ways, and that's not going to change. And fishing's not going away. We need to make sure that these kids are learning how to do it the right way, and getting the right tools and right ideas, so that they go about it in an ethical way, in a way that is not going to damage and ruin it for the next generation.
Amen. Well said.
Yeah, good point.
Jim, we're going to finish up with you. Last words of wisdoms, things that you would like to see going forward. Any thoughts, critiques, suggestions?
I know we talked about a lot of regulation here, but look at the rate that, like I hear so many people make comments like, well, it isn't a rule until you get caught breaking it, and, stuff like that. The stuff that I watch out here, it's just horrendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. We can come back to fish limits. Who the hell needs 50 perch in a bucket? And the bottom line is, how often can you realistically catch 50 perch that would be, big enough to eat? I know you go to Lake Simcoe, and there's always the guy with the bucket. And I got this, I got a bucket with, they're all 10 inches. But I also see the other people. I don't even live over there or do it much anymore, and I still get contact on Facebook. We went on the weekend in Lake Simcoe. Nobody caught anything. It's still, you still got to be where the fish are. There's things like that. That's why guys that have the, that rent the huts year after year have them in a lot of traditional spots. But I also know a couple of guys now that are nowhere near where they used to be 20 years ago, because the fish don't come there anymore. And it's little things like that. But regulation, it's always tough to enforce. It's tough to just getting people to learn it. Like Tammy said to me here today, she said to me, how late in the fall can you keep a largemouth here? Somebody asked the question. I said, let me look it up.
Yeah.
I would never keep a largemouth.
True enough.
Yeah, that's right.
That kind of thing. And, little things like that. It's one of those things, but I don't know. I think we need to pay more respect to it. We don't, in recent years, and I don't want this to sound the same way, but fish seem to get used to raise money for everything and anything in the world. They have a fishing tournament, or, to raise money to fix the window that got broken at the community center, so the fish take the trash of that. Some of the ones, and all kinds of stuff like that. Some of the ones I've seen are just for no reason, and they're blatant fish kills.
Mm-hmm.
People are killing fish at a chance to win a prize.
Yeah.
Fish get killed because I've fished tournaments. I've killed fish before, but it's not the same as just going out and drawing tickets, and the guy goes down with the bobber and the 6-aught hook and the worm, catches the 4-pound largemouth and kills it when he wins a golf club or whatever. That type of approach to it. And it's just
ice tournaments too. You see that on the ice too. You see that on the ice as well.
Oh, it's bad on the ice.
Yeah,
it's bad in the summertime. The ice fishing is like out of control.
Yeah.
I will be very quick in what I would like to see, and it's a little bit off track of what we've discussed. Obviously, fish handling, creel samples, catch limits, how we pollute and how we shouldn't pollute water are all big components and important to judge and steer where we are going in the future. If there's anything that I would love to see the angling community at a large become, is more humble. At the end of the day, it's very, very difficult to promote others if you're so into promoting yourself. And if there's anything that I would love to see as a whole is our angling community to become humble so that we can reach out and support the Trevors, the Christians, and anybody else for that matter. And I have the luxury of remaining humble because I get this opportunity every Monday with you three, and you guys steer me in the right direction. You keep me humble because I am not the expert on this panel, and I lean towards you guys. And that expertise has kept me in a place where it's very, very easy to promote the three of you because not only do I respect you, but I listen to everything you say. So if there's anything that I can give advice to our community, stay humble. Just stay.
You're a gem, buddy.
Yep. Thanks for doing what you do, Scotty, man. It's so great.
Likewise.
So great.
Now with that wrapping up, all I can say is go Jays, go.
Go Jays.
Thanks for your time, guys. We'll see you next Monday, and hopefully the Jays hit it out of the park. Thanks for all your time, guys, and thanks for being you.
Be safe.
All right, man.
See you, boys.
Yep.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.